You ever hear about a guy who dressed up as Santa at Walmart, smiling, taking pictures with kids, passing out candy canes, all while hiding the most gut-wrenching secret in his own backyard? Yeah, buckle up because this story is about to wreck you. So, meet William Wallace. Nope, not the Braveheart guy. This one was a family man from Idaho who seemed, at least on the surface, like the kind of dude you'd see cracking jokes in the checkout line. He was the guy who'd put on the Santa suit at Walmart during the holidays, pose with kids, and play the part of a cheerful, harmless father figure. He was 31 years old, lived in the suburbs, and to the people around him, he was just another regular guy. Maybe a little goofy, maybe a little odd, but nothing about him screamed danger. But as we've all learned from stories like this, the people who look the most normal sometimes have the darkest secrets. Behind closed doors, Wallace wasn't the jolly neighbor. He was a father of 3 little kids, 2 boys, ages 4 and 7, and a daughter, just barely 6 years old. And these kids weren't just his whole life. They were literally his responsibility because their mother wasn't around. Neighbors saw the kids running around the yard, sometimes barefoot, sometimes looking a little neglected, but hey, kids run wild, right? Nobody wanted to judge. And William was always right there, waving from his porch, pretending like everything was fine. But that fine mask, it started to crack. First in little ways. People noticed William yelling at his kids in the driveway. A neighbor overheard him threatening them. And sometimes those kids just didn't show up outside at all. The more he tried to act like Walmart Santa, the more his personal life was rotting underneath. And here's where it takes a darker turn. At some point, Wallace crossed the line from being a bad dad to something truly evil. Instead of caring for his children, he turned into their executioner. Authorities later pieced together that his kids were killed inside that very house by his own hands. And instead of calling for help, instead of doing the bare minimum of being a human being, he went out into the backyard, dug shallow graves, and buried all 3 of his children like they were trash. And here's the part that makes my stomach flip every time I read it. While his kids were literally decomposing in the dirt behind his house, Wallace kept showing up to Walmart, dressing up as Santa, and spreading holiday cheer. Can you imagine taking your kids to sit on Santa's lap, and later finding out that Santa himself had buried his children in his own yard? That's nightmare fuel. But of course, a secret like this doesn't stay buried forever. A few weeks later, people started asking questions. Teachers noticed the kids weren't in school anymore. A neighbor mentioned not seeing them for weeks. The police did a welfare check, and when they finally searched his backyard, yeah, they found the bodies, wrapped up, buried in shallow graves, right where he thought nobody would look. Now, if this story feels like it can't possibly be real, I'm right there with you. But unfortunately, it is. William Wallace, the so-called Walmart Santa, was arrested and charged with murdering his 3 kids. In court, the details came out one by one, and the jury was just floored. The guy who smiled for photos with kids at Walmart had turned his own house into a crime scene. The most disturbing part? His motive was almost non-existent. Prosecutors argued it was a mix of anger, neglect, and cold-blooded selfishness. There wasn't a huge payday. There wasn't some dramatic feud. He just killed them because he could. And that, in a way, is scarier than any other kind of true crime story. Imagine realizing you let your kid sit on his lap, all while his victims were buried in his own yard. People couldn't stop talking about the irony. Santa Claus, the guy who's supposed to represent joy and childhood magic, turned out to be the monster destroying it. And that's what makes this story stick. The disguise wasn't just the red suit and white beard. It was his whole personality. He hid behind being the funny Walmart Santa, when in reality, he was the worst kind of predator, one that his victims trusted because they were his own children. So yeah, the next time you're at a store and see a mall Santa laughing it up, you probably won't forget this story. Because William Wallace, the Walmart Santa, wasn't handing out toys. He was hiding 3 little graves in his backyard. Subscribe for more, because the next story is just as insane.